May 12, 2025. The world was just starting to celebrate a promising young star in the country music scene. But behind the scenes, a silent storm was brewing. In the quiet town of Boise, Idaho, something devastating was unfolding that would change everything forever. What happened to Canaan James? How did his bright future suddenly take a heartbreaking turn that no one saw coming? This is the tragic story you've never heard, and it's more heartbreaking than you could imagine. Canaan James first captured America's attention with his soulful, deep voice and heartfelt performances on American Idol. His unique style stood out immediately among thousands of contestants. But what made him truly unforgettable was the emotion he poured into every song. Audiences felt like they weren't just hearing music, they were hearing pieces of his own story and pain. Yet, behind that bright, hopeful stage presence was a much darker and more complicated reality. Canaan wasn't just an aspiring singer chasing his dreams, he was someone who had endured a lifetime of challenges and loss that few fans ever got to see. Before he was a talented performer on national television, he was a young man carrying heavy burdens, battles with his past that threatened to break him. His rise to fame was not just a story of talent meeting opportunity, but a testament to raw determination to overcome personal heartbreak. In many ways, his music was both a refuge and a way to communicate feelings he found difficult to express otherwise. This was not the typical journey of an overnight success. It was a slow and painful climb out of hardship, trauma, and sorrow. What you see on the stage is only the surface. Beneath it lies a story filled with resilience, tears, and a fight to heal that most people never got to know while cheering him on. This is the beginning of the heartbreaking tragedy that shaped Canaan James. Not just as a contestant on American Idol, but as a human being. The deeper you look, the more you realize how intertwined his pain was with his passion, and how his journey was much more than just a competition. It was a fight for survival, identity, and a chance at hope. Long before his debut on American Idol, Canaan James's life was marked by hardship that few would expect from a rising star. Growing up in a small town with very few opportunities, his world was limited, but music became his escape and his salvation. As a kid, he faced difficulties that left deep emotional scars, family struggles, financial hardships, and moments of loneliness that could have easily derailed his future. Despite the odds stacked against him, Canaan found solace in singing and songwriting, pouring his feelings into melodies that helped him process pain and gave him a sense of purpose. His journey wasn't easy. He worked countless odd jobs, faced rejection, and battled the self-doubt that comes with wanting more but not knowing if you could ever get it. In those early years, music was more than a hobby. It was a lifeline that kept him grounded when everything else felt uncertain. The small-town atmosphere made it difficult for him to imagine a bigger world, but he held on to the dream of sharing his voice with others. The road to American Idol was paved with years of perseverance, late-night writing sessions, and learning to turn personal struggles into powerful performances. This foundation of hardship shaped his character and made his later success even more remarkable. Yet the pain and struggles he endured were never far from his mind, and in many ways they fueled his performances, giving him a depth and sincerity that captivated audiences. Understanding where Canaan came from is key to appreciating not only his talent but also the courage it took to even step onto that stage. His story wasn't just about becoming famous. It was about overcoming the limitations of his environment and personal history to find his voice, both literally and figuratively. As American Idol progressed, Canaan James quickly became one of the standout performers, dazzling judges and audiences alike with his rich vocal tone and emotional delivery. But behind the curtain, the pressures of competing on such a massive stage began to take their toll on him in ways no one could see. The excitement of the spotlight came with its own battles. Anxiety, fear of failure, and the overwhelming weight of expectations that were sometimes impossible to meet. For Canaan, the competition stirred up not only nerves but also old wounds from his past, which suddenly felt closer and harder to control. Fame wasn't the dream he thought it would be. Instead, it became a complicated mix of hope and pain, joy and struggle. The emotional roller coaster of the show triggered memories and feelings that had been buried for years, forcing him to confront parts of himself he wasn't ready to face publicly. While fans saw a confident, polished performer on stage, the reality was far different. He was fighting to keep his emotions in check, while also trying to give the best performance possible. This internal conflict created moments where his vulnerability shined through, making his music even more authentic but also revealing cracks in his armor. The pressure cooker environment of the show is known to test contestants in ways beyond singing, and for Canaan, it exposed just how much pain he had been carrying silently. Every song was more than a contest piece. It was a window into his soul, a cry for understanding that resonated deeply with viewers but came at a personal cost. This struggle between personal healing and public performance was a defining part of his American Idol journey, a hidden battle that added layers of meaning to his story. Throughout the live shows, many fans started noticing a subtle but unmistakable change in Canaan James. While his voice remained as powerful and moving as ever, there was a sadness in his eyes and a heaviness in his presence that couldn't be ignored. The energy he once carried seemed tempered by something deeper, something unspoken. Viewers speculated and fans worried. What was happening behind the scenes that was affecting him so much? The rumors ranged from personal struggles to creative differences, but the truth was far more personal and painful than anyone suspected. Canaan was grappling with feelings that couldn't be solved with fame or applause. The spotlight, while illuminating his talent, also highlighted the isolation he felt. The more he tried to share his story through music, the more difficult it became to keep his pain at bay. This silent battle played out in quiet moments between performances and interviews, where he appeared drained and vulnerable. The contrast between his public persona and private turmoil was stark, and it left many wondering how he managed to keep going. The emotional weight began to affect his confidence, and while his fans rallied behind him, the reality was that Canaan was facing a deeply personal storm. This period in the competition became a turning point, not just for the audience's perception, but for Canaan himself, as he realized that some struggles couldn't be hidden forever. The sadness many sensed was real, and it was tied to a past heartbreak he had kept locked away from public view. What Canaan James never fully shared during his time on American Idol was a tragedy that had deeply affected his family and shaped who he was as a person and performer. Growing up, he experienced a devastating loss that left a permanent mark on his heart. This wasn't just a difficult moment, it was a defining event that cast a long shadow over his life. The details were painful, but the impact was even more profound. It was a loss that shook the very foundation of his world and forced him to grow up faster than most. This tragedy wasn't something he talked about often, but it was the silent force behind his music, his emotions, and his determination. The heartbreak gave his voice a raw authenticity, and every note he sang was infused with memories of pain and love lost. His refusal to openly discuss this event at first was not out of secrecy, but from the difficulty of reliving such intense emotions in front of millions. Yet, for those who understood the layers beneath his performances, it was clear that this loss fueled both his strength and his struggles. It explained the occasional cracks in his confidence, and the moments of vulnerability that fans connected with so deeply. This tragedy wasn't just a footnote in his past. It was the lens through which he viewed the world and his music. It added complexity to his story and deepened the emotional resonance that made his journey so compelling. Eventually, Canaan James did open up about his past in a deeply emotional interview, revealing the heartbreaking truth that had shaped his life and career. He spoke about the loss that had haunted him for years, the family tragedy that left him feeling broken but also determined to honor those memories through his music. This moment was a breakthrough not only for him, but for his fans who suddenly understood the depth behind his performances. The tragedy wasn't just a chapter in his past, it was an ever-present shadow that affected his mental health, his outlook on life, and even his ability to perform at times. Opening up was not easy, and the courage it took to share such personal pain inspired many. It helped fans see beyond the stage persona to the real person underneath, someone fighting battles far bigger than a singing competition. The revelation also sparked conversations about the toll fame can take on those with unresolved trauma. Canaan's story highlighted how personal grief can intersect with public life, sometimes making the spotlight feel more like a spotlight on pain than on success. His honesty brought a raw and human element to the entertainment world, reminding everyone that behind every talented artist is a complex person with their own struggles. It was a turning point that added new meaning to his journey and deepened the connection between him and those who followed his story. Despite the heartbreaking truth and ongoing struggles, Canaan James's resilience became a beacon of hope for many. His music was no longer just about competition or fame. It was a message of healing and perseverance for anyone facing hardship. Even as he fought private battles, he found a way to inspire millions through his performances, proving that pain could be transformed into something beautiful. His vulnerability on stage resonated with people who felt seen and understood for the first time. Canaan's ability to channel his grief into his art made his story one of courage, not defeat. However, beneath the surface, the scars of his tragedy were still very much alive, and coping with fame added a new layer of complexity to his healing process. The pressures to succeed combined with his personal pain created a difficult balance that few understood. But through it all, Canaan never gave up on his dream or on himself. His journey became about more than just music. It was about fighting to live fully despite loss and trauma. His story encouraged others to face their own struggles and find strength in vulnerability. It was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope can shine through. As the competition drew to a close, many wondered what the future held for Canaan James. Behind the scenes, he was working hard to reclaim his life and his music beyond the reality show spotlight. The tragedy that had once threatened to define him was now something he was learning to live with, not be controlled by. He began focusing on using his platform to share messages of hope, resilience, and healing, hoping to inspire others facing similar battles. But this was easier said than done. The emotional toll of his past and the stress of sudden fame made it difficult to maintain balance. Friends and family provided support, but Canaan knew the real work had to come from within. His journey wasn't just about making it as a singer anymore. It was about reclaiming his identity and learning how to thrive, despite everything he had been through. The road ahead was uncertain, but his commitment to growth and healing was clear. Canaan's story was no longer just about heartbreak. It was about transformation. And as he prepared to take the next steps in his career, many fans held their breath, hoping that this talented young man could finally find the peace and happiness he deserved. Just when it seemed like Canaan James might finally find stability and success, an unexpected and shocking twist rocked his world. This event, which unfolded shortly after his run on American Idol, sent shockwaves through his fans and the music community alike. What happened wasn't just a personal setback. It was a reminder of how fragile life can be, especially for those dealing with hidden pain. The details were devastating, shaking the foundation of the hope he had been building. Friends and supporters were left stunned, trying to come to terms with how someone so full of talent and resilience could face such a heartbreaking blow. The twist exposed just how much more there was to Canaan's story, struggles that went far beyond the stage and the spotlight. It was a reminder that even when it seems like a person has overcome the worst, life can still throw unexpected challenges their way. This event forced Canaan to confront his pain anew, and left fans wondering if he could ever fully recover. The heartbreak was not just his alone. It touched all who believed in him and his music, highlighting the often unseen battles behind fame and success. The heartbreaking tragedy of Canaan James is more than a story about loss. It's about the incredible courage it takes to face darkness and keep moving forward. His journey on American Idol was not just a rise to fame, but a raw, honest struggle with personal demons few ever saw. Through his music, Canaan shared pieces of his soul, turning pain into art that touched millions. But the true payoff of his story lies not just in the heartbreak, but in the resilience, hope, and humanity that shine through despite it all. His tragedy reminds us that behind every star is a human being fighting battles that might never make the headlines. Canaan's story is a powerful lesson in vulnerability, strength, and the healing power of music. If you've stayed with this story until the end, you now understand that his journey is ongoing, a story of survival, courage, and the search for peace in a world that hasn't always been kind. And while the heartbreak remains part of his past, it also fuels a future filled with hope and the promise that even the deepest wounds can lead to new beginnings.